The full Play It Today breakdown is linked in the description on theircheck.com. For Fantasy Zone, the useful answer is pretty clear. Yes, it is still worth playing, but only if you know what kind of arcade game you're actually signing up for. This is not a relaxed pastel shooter. It looks friendly, bright, and almost toy-like. Then it starts taking your money, your upgrades, and your patience. That tension is why Fantasy Zone still makes sense today. It has a very specific hook. You are not just scrolling forward and reacting. You are moving through open stages, hunting bases, collecting money, buying equipment, and trying to stay alive long enough for those purchases to matter. That gives it a different rhythm from a lot of older shooters. It feels compact, sharp, and unusually economic. Every mistake has a price, sometimes literally. So the reason to play Fantasy Zone now is not just historical importance. That is the boring answer. The better reason is that it still has a distinct arcade idea at its center, a cute shooter where the shop system makes survival feel like a small financial crisis, but that is also the reason some players should skip it. If you want a smooth, generous retro game that lets you casually drift through a few stages, Fantasy Zone can feel harsher than its art style suggests. You die quickly, you lose momentum quickly, and when the wrong death strips away the tools that were carrying your run, the game can feel brittle, not unfair in a mysterious way, but definitely arcade hard. So this is a recommendation with caveats. If you like short, score-driven arcade games with pressure and replay value, Fantasy Zone is still a good use of time. If you mainly want a relaxed first shmup, or you bounce off games where one mistake can wreck the next few minutes, this probably is not the friendliest starting point. Now, how should you play it legally today? For most people, the answer is SEGA AGES Fantasy Zone on Nintendo Switch. That is the version to look at first. It is the clearest current official route. It is focused on this game, and it avoids the mess of chasing old ports, delisted collections, or assuming that anything with Fantasy Zone in the name is the same thing. That last part matters. Nintendo Switch Online's SEGA Genesis library includes Super Fantasy Zone, which is related, but it is not the original Fantasy Zone. That may be useful if you're already subscribed and just want a nearby taste of the series, but it should not be treated as the answer to how do I play Fantasy Zone. Older SE Classics collections also create confusion. Some SEGA Classic releases and bundles were delisted for new purchases, while people who already own them may still have access. That makes them a bad recommendation for a new player looking for the simplest legal path today. So again, for the original Fantasy Zone, start with SEGA AGES on Switch. Why that version? Because the best modern version here is not about purist bragging rights. It is about lowering friction without turning the game into something else. Fantasy Zone is still an arcade shooter at heart. You want the directness, the speed, the weird economy, and the danger. But you also want a version that is easy to access on current hardware and built with modern players in mind. That is what the SEGA's release gives you. It is the practical option. It keeps the reason Fantasy Zone matters, while making the act of actually playing it today much less annoying. There is not a separate low friction pick hiding somewhere else. The low friction option and the best overall option are the same thing. And for most players, there is no good reason to make the original arcade release the first stop, unless you are deliberately approaching it as an arcade history exercise. The purist route is interesting. It is just not the most useful recommendation. Before you start, the main thing to understand is the difficulty curve. Fantasy Zone is not hard, only because enemies shoot at you. It is hard because the game ties survival to money and upgrades. You buy weapons and movement options, but those advantages are temporary or fragile. A bad purchase can leave you underprepared. A bad death can undo the advantage you thought you had. and boss fights can expose every weak decision you made earlier. That means a first run should not be treated like a normal sightseeing playthrough. Treat it like learning a compact arcade system. Pay attention to what your money is doing. Notice which upgrades actually help you survive, not just which ones look powerful. Do not assume every shop visit is progress. Sometimes restraint is part of the game. Also, do not be fooled by the presentation. The colour and music make Fantasy Zone look welcoming, but the structure is old school arcade pressure. It wants repeat attempts. It wants you to learn where things go wrong. It wants you to understand the economy, not just dodge better. You do not need a full walkthrough to start. You need the right expectation. This is a bright, strange, demanding arcade shooter where your buying decisions are part of the difficulty. So the final call is simple. Fantasy Zone is still worth playing, but it is not a universal retro recommendation. Play the SEGA Switch version if you want the cleanest legal path and you are ready for a cute game with sharp teeth. Skip it if you only want comfort food.